Hi everyone, my name is Julie Bajic Smith and I'm an aged care psychology consultant. Joe very kindly asked me to join you today and to share a little bit about my journey about aged care work and psychology and what is involved. And I guess it is a unique specialty to work in this area, and even more so given that I work a lot with residential aged care facilities. So I wanted to share with you with my journey where I was when I started more than 10 years ago, what my private practice looked like back then, where I am now, and talk a little bit about the future, the impact of the Royal Commission into aged care, and also COVID. So I've got a few notes just to keep me on track today, because I've got a little baby and because house next door to mine is getting knocked down. So there's just a little bit of noise that is distracting, and I'm hoping that I'll have nice silence for the next 10 minutes. All right, so in Australia, 1 in 7 people are aged 65 plus, meaning that the proportion of people getting older is quite high. So in the coming decades, it's expected to be higher and higher, in that we'll have more and more older people. And what is the common myth associated with aging is, when you get old, you're going to get demented and depressed. And that is not the case. That is not a normal part of aging. So 95% of older adults live in their own homes. They live independently or they live with their families, but only the 5% lives in aged care facilities. In Australia, that 5% equates to about 400,000 people. So it's still a lot of people that are, not enjoying necessarily their health status, where they're at in terms of the environment, or they might have difficulties adjusting and grief and loss and other common themes that come up for people living in aged care homes. So in aged care homes, depression is very high. We know that in normal population, people that live in their own homes, the rate's a lot lower. It's less, than 10%. But as people's health needs change and their independence declines, depression rates tend to go up. So in aged care homes, depression rates are 1 in 2 people. 1 in 2 people are depressed. So when I started out in aged care homes more than a decade ago, I was asked to do some assessments, and I remember just feeling quite overwhelmed and not very supported in my role because there weren't enough resources available about this population. Psychologists weren't necessarily going into aged care homes. Clients out of aged care homes were not coming into private practice and seeing people because they had mobility issues or other barriers. So there was this huge unmet need for people in aged care homes. And I remember back then speaking to Joe, and as I was establishing my career in this area and building my private practice, about training others and training myself first and foremost, and being equipped to meet the needs of older people, both who live in their own homes with declining physical health, as well as those who moved into a nursing home. And I remember, I was driving in between different appointments. My car became my office, and I had a few other psychologists working for me, and we were going to different nursing homes, and it was very unique in a sense of what I was doing. But I felt so privileged to be able to help people at that stage in their lives. So what's important to know about aged care is that a lot of people who move in have difficulties, obviously, with their health. So to move to a nursing home, your physical health needs to be compromised, or your mental health or your memory. An older person can't just move into a nursing home just because they're old. There is a criteria that needs to be met. And often what it means for the older person is that they're having barriers to their wellness, and they may become isolated, they may become withdrawn, they may want to spend more time on their own and not mix with other people. And subsequently what happens is that their physical health and their mental health declines. So the groups that I've been running in aged care homes have involved, bringing people out of their room, getting them to mix together, doing some activities to icebreakers, forming friendships with others in the group. We looked at a lot of cognitive training. We looked at a lot of different aspects of reminiscence, just to try and look at strategies that are not drug approaches to wellness. And that was so much fun doing that. And that was probably the highlight of my career, running those groups, and I really thoroughly enjoyed it. Then I went back to university and did my PhD, and I wanted to examine the well-being in the workforce, and in particular this phenomenon called emotional contagion. So looking at the relationship between older person and their carer. So we know that if an older person is feeling well and if they're in a good mood, that speaking to them will leave us in a good mood as well. But if the person is not necessarily feeling well, that can also impact on the other person that they interact with. So I wanted to really examine that relationship with those two parties. And I found that, yes, whilst it's good that we can have positive interactions and positive outcomes, I'm very concerned about the impact of negative interactions and negative outcomes, because the rates of turnover in aged care are very high. A lot of people leave the industry, and there's a lot that needs to be done about that. But I'm not talking to you about that today. So right now in my private practice, I'm working quite a lot on training in the workforce, looking at non-drug approaches to wellness, and helping aged care workers how they interact with clients who are refusing, to leave their room or participate in activities or go on bus outings. And this is my private practice right now. And I think what's really important to know, and Joe would agree with me on this, is that your private practice can evolve over time, and that the needs can also change. So where I was when I started and where I am today is very different in terms of the services that I provide in aged care, and where I want to move more into future as well, in terms of supporting more psychologists who do this work. It's quite it is a privilege to be able to work at such different aspects of aged care, and involved with people at different stages of their career and their lives. And so no two psychologists who work in aged care are doing the same type of work. And I think that that's really important to know. Even in my journey, over the last decade, I've done lots of different things. And this is, this is my business, and this is where I want to grow as an individual. So I think it's important that we all honor our journeys and where we are, and what it means for us in terms of the workload that we do. And I feel especially privileged that I work in an area such as aged care, where I can take some time out and focus really on the caregivers and families, or I can focus on prevention, or I can focus on palliative care and end of life and supporting people at that stage as well. So there's a lot of different sub areas that we can focus on. And I think that sometimes in our private practice we might come to a stage where we can change the focus of our work and what we do, and that is perfectly okay. So where we go from here is that there are new aged care standards that were introduced in July last year that look at how the service providers, nursing homes, can enhance the well-being of older people and meet their needs. And so they're focusing more on individualized and tailorized needs. It's interesting to see what will transpire out of that, because I know that what's hitting the news line is that a lot of aged care homes are operating at a loss, more than 60%. And I wonder how that transpires at the end for the consumer and their needs. And, specifically if we're hearing all these negative stories that come out of nursing homes, certainly my experience visiting more than 100 homes is not all stories are negative. Not everything is so dark, and there's a lot positivity that's coming out. Even with COVID, service deliveries are happening. Someone might not be able to come into an aged care home and deliver entertainment, but what I'm seeing is that there's a new concept such as window therapy, where the entertainment is happening from outdoors. So they might be coming and trying to jolly up older people through those means as well. So I think that, the aged care is evolving and it's changing a lot. And I'm sure that next time Joe invites me to share with you a little bit more about the journey, that it will be quite different to where it is now. I recently wrote a book about enhancing well-being in aged care. And I think for me, that really highlights that it's important that all parties work together to improve well-being of all the people. So it comes from the carers and interaction with carers, families, service providers, and allied health. So it's not a journey that the older person is involved just with the mental health practitioners. It's really important that we all work together and collaborate well. I'll leave it at that. I think I'm gone over time. Sorry about that, Joe, but that's it for private practice today. Thank you. Bye.